Here we go. A day after election morning. Good morning, crew. Good morning. Good to see you. Good to hear you. Good to find out if you're out there, out and about, making things happen. Oh, I don't know how many of you guys were up late. Who was up late last night watching these crazy results? Crazy. Morning, Rainier. Top of the morning to you. See, we're sliding back into old habits. We've got, it's Wednesday. We used to drag out the pirate gear on Wednesday. Today you'll see I'm wearing the shirt of Bartholomew Roberts. Pirate from the Caribbean, I think. Pretty sure he was in the Caribbean. Black Bart. Favorite Black Bart. That's Bartholomew Roberts. This is his flag. As you know, most pirates have their own flag. I feel like a news guy with the earbud in my ear. I can hear what's going on. Don't get a lot of the back feed across the system. That helps a lot. So hopefully you guys are doing good. Hopefully you're having a good old day. Hopefully Wednesday, we're at the hump. Over the hump. Thanks, Geico, for Ruin Wednesday with that commercial. The camel on it. Guess what day it is? You guys know what day it is. It's Wednesday. It's Pirate Day. We're going to talk about... Got some stuff to talk about today. We're going to talk about it. Grab a news story. We're going to pull a news story out. Yank it out of the stories of the day. We're going to talk about it. And then we're going to dive into how you can protect yourself. Basic level stuff today. We're hitting the high level stuff because we just are starting this format. So format's new. We'll see how it goes. I don't know how you guys thought about yesterday. We'll see how the analytics are going to tell us if you guys are right. We hear you folks. There's the folks that tell us what would be a good direction to go. So we'll see if that's right. We've done a cup of cyber. We're working on 10, 11. This is our 11th month of having cup of cyber every morning, just about. We've been here. Coming live, a live stream. That means you can interact with us. You can talk to us. And we're starting to see analytics, right? And we got to start following the analytics and seeing what you guys want, what you want to hear. And the analytics are saying you guys are into the RMF. You want to know more about risk management, more about security, more about this stuff. The news seems to be important, but more important is give me the skills, give me the training to help move down, to close the gap. Close that gap. I don't know. Is that what you guys want? Is that what you're after? So we're going to see in the analytics, analytics, if that's truly what you're after. The RMF 2.0 course that's going on. We had a good session last night. Eric was there last night. I don't think Eric on yet this morning. I gave him a bad time, because the last two times he didn't make the live session. So I gave him a bad time when he came on, just to mess with him, because that's what you do. And then Kofi came on late, so we stayed a little late. I do have my Minnesota coffee cup, one of the good contentious battleground states, I guess, Minnesota. I think they've worked those things out. Illy coffee. Like that Illy coffee. So we had a good session last night. We walked through the prepare step. We did that 15-minute run through the prepare step. We walked through what's the organization side of it and what's the system side of it. And the organization side, if my numbers are right, it's about 7 tasks that have to be done. And at the system side, there's about 11 tasks that have to be done. And we got, and I know NIST has this in this one block of prepare. It's like one block, and I think my view, I've been doing this for years now, my view is you got to split prepare out. I'm glad they added prepare. but you can't treat it as one giant step. It's got to be the system stuff, and it's got to be the organizational stuff. That organizational stuff has to be done before anybody at all starts the RMF at the organization. My view on the world. Mike is here. Good morning, Mike. Oof, what a night. Yeah, I know, and it's still going on, man. It's still going on. And Richard, good morning. Top of the morning, Richard. I'm not sure if we've seen you on the show before, but welcome to the crew. Welcome to the team. Welcome to the community. If you haven't been on before, I don't. Maybe I might getting a little bit of gray hair here, so can't remember. I don't remember seeing you before though. But if I have, I apologize. So what we got today? What do we got to look at? RMF. Love the folks going through the RMF course. They got so many good questions. Eric was one brought up last night. Can you give me the run through prepare? Can you give me that 10,000 foot? Just run through it. Those tasks. Tell me what they're all about. Give me the big view. And I think that was awesome. I think that was an excellent way to look at it. An excellent way to run through it. So we did that last night. We walked through that. A lot of stuff. The RMF course, we're getting ready to make round number 2. We're going to shove a whole bunch of. We didn't have plans to put the labs in there. And when I say labs, they're not labs like most people think. That's not, you're going to log into something. It's labs that give you the ability to try the task. And a lot of stuff in the RMF, it's a lot of paperwork. Most of it's like getting your paperwork straight, so you know how to build those systems. And that's what we're talking about: is building those labs where you can practice building the paperwork, practice categorizing the system, practice selecting the controls. So that's the important part. So we're going to go back through, and we're going to shove those labs in. We're going to add those labs in. We got to get all the courseware out first. The labs is going to be the incremental edition number 1 that's going to come. You're going to have access to that, like we talked to Eric and those folks. You got access to the lab for at least 6 months. And you got Mike. Wait, come on, Mike. Your question's got to come from YouTube all the way over. And the question is using GRC governance, risk, and compliance tools. Not this round, but we're working with a couple of the big guys. Not Archer. We're not working with Archer because Archer is just way too big. They don't want to work with anyone that's going to provide training that's not their training. So if you want to do Archer training, you have to go to RSA. You have to pay for their big pile of money to go through their Archer training. So there's a couple smaller GRCs we're working with, and we're trying to implement that into a future release, and it may be a separate course all on its own. We don't know yet. It's going to depend how the conversations with the GRC tools go. But the GRC, I think, that's kind of step 2. You got to get the basics down. You got to be able to do it. It's kind of like building a web page. You got to have the ability to build a web page in HTML before you go use the automated tools. I think the same thing. Know how to do the RMF manually, and then use the GRC tools. And the GRC tools, if you guys haven't worked with them before, they make things easier. They automate the process. Archer's the big dog. Archer's the biggest game in town right now for GRC. There's a bunch of people that make GRC tools, though. So we're working with some of the folks to try to get the ability to bring an GRC tool in to let you guys get hands-on, even if it's kind of in a canned lab. So that's a future enhancement we hope to have. It's going to be dependent on those GRC vendors, if they can provide us access. Looks fairly positive right now, though. So that's a good thing. And Eric is here. Eric, I was telling everyone I was giving you a bad time last night for not showing up, not knowing who you were. Archer is very, very expensive. Very expensive. If you buy Archer, it's like everything else. You buy Archer, and then everything's a module. Everything's an add-on to it. So that's why we're going with one of these other. Well, that's not the only reason. I guess if we could get Archer, we'd probably go with Archer because it's the big dog. But there's just no way to get Archer. We can look at. You want to take a run? You're talking about taking a dry run through the course, looking at some of the modules, looking at how it looks. We could probably do that this week. We could probably take a look at one of the modules this week. We can probably do that. Maybe we'll take that for a Friday activity. We'll walk through the Cyber-Recon lab. We'll take a look into the course. Makes sense, Mike? Let's take a look into it. And that's why this is why you guys are awesome right here. CR. Iramba is open source, and I think, got to get the notes out. Iramba, huh? I think that's worth looking into. ERAMBA. ERA. I have not used that before. CR, awesome. Oh, that probably doesn't belong on the screen. But yeah, cool. Message me. Hit me up, Mike. You know where I'm at. So, a couple things we need to know. Hitting this up front, today is National Candy Day. November 4th, I guess, we got October 31st, all that candy's hanging out at your house. We make it to November 4th. If you still got any candy hanging out at your house, it's time to eat it up. National Candy Day is November 4th. Enjoy a big pile of candy, I guess, is what we're going to talk about today. That's your water cooler talk of the day. Emotet. So we'll talk about Emotet. Actually, hold on a second. Let me take Emotet off. I got in trouble for this the other day. We didn't bring in, let's do the intro. Then we'll circle back around and we'll talk about the news. So this one's for Dee. She got on me for not doing the intro yesterday. So we'll be right back. Always the catchy little intro. And I think, yeah, if CR, if you have experience with that, if you are all schooled up on Aramba, I'm gonna have to look that one up. I'd love your feedback. Maybe we get together, we can bring you on and talk about it a little bit, either in video or just in audio, and just talk about your experience with Aramba. Talk about what you think about it, how it works, your thoughts, your feelings, your woes. Dee says just makes the show. She didn't get mad at me. Of course, she hardly ever gets mad at me. Usually it's because I do something silly, and normally she has reason to be mad at me. So let's talk about Emotet. Emotet real quick, right? So Emotet, detected attacks using Emotet Trojan soared over 1,200% from second quarter, to the third quarter of this year. So just jumping like crazy. And this according to Info Security. Yeah. So installations picked out a large and sustained increase in the malicious spam campaigns. So again, how they're getting in, how they're coming across their spam. They're coming across the spam. They're trying social engineering in a way to get in, and you got to train your users. That's what we're going to talk about. It's part of what we're going to talk about today. It's the tip of the iceberg. And then they get in. Once they get in, they're deploying secondary TrickBot and QuackBot infections, as well as human-operated ransomware. And that's the high-end stuff. That's the primo ransomware. When they have a human behind the keyboard, you've got a good network. You've got a good information if they've got human-operated ransomware. That means somebody is spending time behind a keyboard trying to exploit your network. That's where you don't want to be. That's a dangerous place to be. So some quotes by Alex Holland, who's HP Inc.'s senior malware analyst. The targeting of enterprises is consistent with the objectives of Emotet's operators, many of which are keen to broker access to compromised systems to ransomware actors. So again, this is this thought of selling access. Within underground forums and marketplaces, access brokers often advertise characteristics about organizations they've breached, such as size and revenue, to appeal to buyers. We know that. We talked about this in the past. That's the big thing these folks on the underground markets are talking about is, what's the revenue? Because then the ransomware operator is going to say, I'm going to use a percentage of that revenue to gauge my ransomware, my ransom amount. Ransomware operators in particular are becoming increasingly targeted in their approach to maximize potential payments, moving away from their usual spray and pray techniques. This has contributed to the rise of average ransomware payments, which has increased by 60%. So ransomware has gone up 60% because these guys act like an organization. They're focusing on their core value, which is ransomware, and they're not worrying about infecting the system anymore. They're doing that. So attackers typically use thread hijacking, and this is a dangerous technique where a user's inbox is compromised and monitored so that Emotet can reply to a legitimate email with malicious attachments or links. This makes the success more likely. So what they're doing is they get onto someone's computer. They compromise someone, normally with some type of spam, some type of social engineering. They compromise that person, and then they sit there and they wait, and they hopefully look at their Outlook box. We're going to say Outlook, whatever mail system they're using, and they watch the conversations go back and forth, and they pick up a thread where you're talking back and forth to someone, and then they compromise. Since they've got compromise of your system, they compromise that mail thread, and then they inject the attack into a conversation that's already going on, right? And they may do it at the exact right point when that receiver of the message is expecting an attachment, right? So this is so dangerous because generally when we talk about social engineering training to our users, phishing campaigns, we say, hey, don't open an email if you don't know who it's coming from. Don't open an email if you're not expecting conversations from that person. And don't open attachments if you're not expecting them. So if these guys can jump on that thread and they can fire off an email within that thread from someone you're talking to, expecting an attachment from, it's hard. It's hard to stop that, right? So you got to stop them, the bad guys. You got to stop the bad guy from compromising your system in the first place. You got to keep them out, and that's not just as easy as saying user training, right? User training is the big thing for this case. User training, you got to have a strong user training program, right? End user, role-based training, administrative training, mobile user, remote access training, all these things you have to have. You've got to have them. But it's bigger than that. There's the three ways we talk about folks getting into your network, right? The exposed connections on the internet, the RDP, remote desktop protocol connections on the internet, unpatched systems, and end user training. That's a huge area, right? This is a huge area of stuff. So we fall back on the second half of what we're going to talk about today. We're talking about this guy, the risk management framework. And that's what we have been building around. And what we're talking about is, wow, that's pretty big. It's got me covered up here a little bit. Baseline controls. Let's right size that a little bit. So we're talking about baseline controls. We'll put that right there. Baseline control and control baselines, however you want to say it, right? That's what we've got. We've got to pick the right controls for our system. We've got to build our system with the right controls. So before we jump in that, let's catch up on the chat. So Mike's saying that would be awesome if we could bring CR on and speak about this open source GRC tool. I agree 100%. That would be awesome. I don't know if he's up to it. He's got a big conversation back. Like it. Tried to deploy it, but my company wanted a big box solution. Yeah, they all do. That way you get there's some solid value in the big box because then you get the support, but you get that big box price. I don't know. Did some testing, looks promising. They actually have a demo environment that lets you log in and test drive it. Yeah, CR, you and I, maybe we can talk later and see if you want to come on and talk about it, what you did. Maybe we can set up next week. We can set up, or when you have time, we can set up a demo. We can walk through it online. We can Share it with the group. That's what this is. You guys know this is a community where we all help each other out. This is something I had never heard about. And I've been doing RMF since it came out, and I've never heard of this open source tool. So CR, on top of it, man. I gotta say, yeah, big claps in my head for CR. Thank you so much for sharing. That is awesome. Awesome. Excellent. So we have to build some control baselines for our system. We have to say every system needs to be protected, and we need to look at this at the organization level. We need to build an organization-wide structure for how we're going to implement baselines. And then we have to make sure that the systems, our system owners, build the baselines in accordance with that. So we can, in the show notes, we've got 2 links to 2 videos that we've already done. One of them is the organizationally tailored baseline, part of RMF 2.0. So we've got that video. You can check that out. We'll have Mako put it in the show notes afterwards when we do the little modifying. It takes a while for the video to get all uploaded onto the YouTubes. But the organizationally tailored baselines are perfect. You say, okay, we have these SCADA systems. We're going to build controls that we know have to be implemented into each of these systems, and we'll build a baseline as an organization for those systems, right? The other one we talk about is control selection, which is a step in the select step. That's really where we pick the baseline, and that's from kind of some off-the-shelf stuff, or we build them, control by control. So that's what we want to look at this morning. We want to look at the different ways we can build baselines. We know there's a couple different ways, right? So the one method is the high water mark, and that's what the NIST proposes. That's what they market to most of their folks. If you're a national security system, then you use the objectives, the security objective based baselining, which I think is better. I think it's a better process. With high watermark, there's the ability to get controls added to your control list that should never be there. And we're going to jump into both ways of doing that this morning. So let's get this stuff off the screen. I'm going to jump over. Let me get this set up before I go over there. And let's jump over here. Get me. Look, I'm a little talking head in the bottom down here. Let's get that off the screen so we don't get a hit for monetization because they don't like them on there. So we're going to start. We're going to start at NIST, right? That's where we've got to start. You got to start at NIST, right? NIST has released special publication 853 Bravo, which you're going to see right here, in its final form, right? So that's for a while that's been out there in draft, not very long, not as long as 53 by any way, shape, or form, but 53 Bravo is out there. So we can take a look at 53 Bravo, right? And this is our control baselines. There it is. Let's make this thing. Got to find my plus. We'll make it a little bit bigger so you guys can actually see it. So this is control baselines for information systems and organizations. And I've got to get this other laptop because I was doing some magic in Excel last night. But as we roll down, let me get this one up here, up and running. Come on. Sorry, guys. So let me get my Excel spreadsheet up here. I was doing some math last night, right? So this used to be part of 853. The baselines used to be part of 853, and they've pulled them out, they've yanked them out, and they've created a separate document form. And there's some good reasons for doing that, right? And so, they're telling you this is on all the documents now because there are some people on the Amazon that have taken these documents and they've just printed them and they're selling them on Amazon, which is fine. Some people like a hard copy. It's nice to get a hard copy of them. But they must make sure that this document is free of charge if you go out to NIST and get it, right? So one thing, we've got a lot of front matter up here. One thing that's funny, and I didn't notice this until I was looking back through it. Sorry for the scrolling, guys. Getting through the front matter. The baselining we talked about yesterday is right here. They talk about all that's been moved into here. It's been moved into the front part of 53 Bravo, right? Tailoring control baselines, right? This is all the stuff we talked about yesterday. Scoping considerations, compensating controls, identifying and designating common controls. That stuff was all the stuff we talked about yesterday, and they walked through all of it, which is great. Thanks, NIST, for doing that, putting it in a document that we can follow. So we're going to keep rolling past that because we talked about that yesterday. So you can go check out yesterday's show. We talked in deep detail about that. And then we finally get to the baselines. And I kind of have, I like and I don't like, and good morning, Alex. Sorry, I apologize for not seeing you there, Alex. Good morning, Alex. I like and I don't like how they did this, right? On one hand, it's kind of nice. They've done it. There's 20 different tables, right? And it's a table for each family. And some things you need to know about this baseline, and this is, again, this is based on the high water mark. So when we look at the categorization of our system, first we look at each information type, and then we're going to get a high, moderate, and low rating for each of the security objectives of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And then we're going to roll those up. We're going to figure out the highest of each of those, and there's a video on that too. We'll throw that up there. And then we're going to determine the highest of those for each of the information types, and then whatever's the highest becomes the high water mark for the system. So we could potentially have a system that is low for confidentiality, low for integrity, but high for availability, and that's going to give us high for across the board. So any control from the high range in any of the objectives we get to implement, even if it doesn't fit. And that really kind of doesn't make sense sometimes. But that's the nature of the beast with this high watermark process. So we've only got 3 control baselines. We won't talk about the privacy baseline right now. 3 standard control baselines that we can use when we're thinking about the high watermark, and that's low, moderate, and high. And we see them right here on access control. So this first table is just the access controls, and you see every control over here, AC1, and then like every enhancement, AC2 and enhancement 1. They're all listed, and then if you go over to the table, if there's an X in the column for your categorization, if you're categorized as low, then you have to do AC1, but you don't have to do AC2 enhancement 1 right here, because that's not listed in your column. So you have to do, anytime there's an X in that column, you have to implement that. Well, I shouldn't say you have to implement it. That has to be part of your initial control baseline before tailoring. Now we're talking about this baseline is before we tailor it. So these are the controls we start with, right? So we have anything that has an X in low becomes part of the low baseline. Anything that has an X in moderate becomes part of the moderate baseline, and anything that has an X in high, I think you guys can guess what I'm going to say, that becomes part of your high baseline. So that's baseline. That's where we start from. That's not our final set of implemented controls we have to implement, but that's where we start. So I shoved all these into Excel last night. It was a fun time. It really was. And then the other one we have is privacy baseline, privacy control baseline, which is kind of an additional baseline. You kind of have to use that with the other baselines. So if you have privacy, like you have PII, you're going to implement the high watermark baseline, low, moderate, or high, plus the privacy control baseline. So if you have any PII, regardless of what baseline you're using, low, moderate, or high, if you have an X in the privacy control column, you also have to implement that. And generally they apply here. There's a few where they're by themselves. So the numbers you need to know. And these, I got to go through, I'll double check these, but I think they're pretty accurate because I tried to, it's always funny playing with Excel. If you've got a low baseline, if you're implementing the low baseline for your system, you're going to have 149 controls and enhancements that you're going to have to start with from your baseline. If you have a moderate, you're going to have 284 controls and enhancements. I'm making sure I say controls and enhancements. So guys, I hear this all the time. This AC2 is a control. This AC2 And we say it's way in AC2 enhancement 1, this is an enhancement, right? So we can't say that, these are all controls. They're not all controls. AC2 is a control. AC2 1 is an enhancement, right? Yeah, that's a lot of controls and enhancements, right? And if we go to the high level, there's 365 controls and enhancements, right? But that's before tailoring. That's before we determine inherited controls, common controls. That's before we determine, hybrid controls. That's before we determine any that don't apply. And to talk about that, that's a tailoring process. That's what we went through yesterday, on the video yesterday. We went through that tailoring process. Maybe a little bit out of order, and it's just because we're going with kind of this first week is getting things set, because this is a change in format, guys. But to deal with things like Emotet and this malware, we have to have controls. And controls are safeguards. They're protections we put in place to stop things from happening on our network, right? So if we think of a simple thing like your car, you drive your car, right? And you're driving your car, and it's going to depend on a lot of variables, right? It's going to depend on the environment you're in. Are you in a good neighborhood? Are you in a bad neighborhood? The situation, are you parking your car for long term, or is it just short term? Are you just running to the store, or are you leaving it there and you're flying away for a vacation for a week? There's a lot of variables we have to consider, but there's some basic controls we can put in place to protect our car, right? So if we pull up somewhere, we get out of our car, we lock the car. That's a control, right? We set the alarm. That's a control. We park under a light. That's a control. We park in a high traffic area where there's a lot of people. That's a control. They're things we put in place to provide protection to our asset. Our asset in this case is a car and anything inside of it. That's the asset we're protecting it. We're protecting it from a threat, which is probably that burglar, that criminal that wants to break in, steal your stuff, or steal your car. When those two things come together, when you have a vulnerability and a threat, that becomes a risk. So we want to counter the risk with controls, and we drive the risk down with controls. So if we know we're in a bad neighborhood, and we know there's criminals there, and we know we have a value in our car or something inside of our car there's a value in that asset, and we know maybe there's a risk. Maybe my window doesn't roll up; it's broken. That's a vulnerability, right? So now we've got a bona fide risk. We've got a threat, and we've got a vulnerability. We've got a bona fide risk, right? Even if the window does roll up, we've got a risk if that threat actor can act on a vulnerability. Like there's a vulnerability to glass; it can break, right? So even if we have the windows rolled up and the car locked, there's the possibility the glass could be broken, right? So that's a inherent vulnerability in the glass, is it has the ability to be broken. So there is a risk there. So we put mitigating factors in place. We put layered defenses. We lock the car and set an alarm. So if the window's broken, then the alarm goes off. So those are things we talk about with these controls. So the controls are those safeguards. So we have to go through them and say, do they make sense for the system I'm building? And that's what yesterday's topic was, is tailoring out the ones that don't make sense, getting rid of them. So this is a high-level view of 853 Bravo, and this is how the NIST looks at it with the high watermark. So you're just going to have a control baseline that's low, moderate, or high, right? Now, I was saying, if you're in the intelligence community, or if you're in DoD dealing with national security systems, or I think the DoD kind of expanded it to do, I think most of their systems follow this objective-based tailoring, or objective-based baseline development process. They follow the CNSSI, the Committee on National Security Systems instruction number 1253. And if you look, this is from 2014. That's been updated a little bit across along the way, but you're going to notice this does not include our Rev 5 controls. Well, thank you, Richard. I appreciate that. I'm not going to throw it on the screen right now because I'll put that up in a minute. So when we look at 1253, this is how we do systems that are not part of the normal government. Like it's not part of the Department of Interior, not part of Department of Education, that kind of thing. I like this way a lot more than the high watermark. So CNSSI 1253 provides a lot of additional information, because national security systems get treated differently than normal government systems. And one of those things is they get a lot more controls, right? But understand that this document has not been updated to reflect the controls from the new control catalog. So these controls will be revision 4 controls. So NIST Special Publication 853 revision 4 is the controls we'll look in here. So don't get confused with that, because there is a little bit of difference. We're talking about a little bit, maybe not apples and oranges, but we're talking about oranges and maybe clementines or something like that, a grapefruit or something. So all kinds of information. We'll talk more about 1253 later. One of my favorite documents. There's all kinds of good information in here, and some of the stuff that NIST has picked up on and brought across to the other side, like identifying those controls that are primed to be inheritable. So we're going to the back. We're looking for this table right here. And again, Appendix D, we're talking about security controls. And remember, in an NSS, a national security system, we're going to get a categorization for each of the security objectives. We're getting a categorization for confidentiality, and that's how we're going to pick controls from confidentiality. We're getting a categorization for integrity, and then we're getting a categorization for availability. So in a non-NSS system, we would say our categorization for the system is moderate, for example, and that's it. It's just moderate. In an NSS system, like an intelligence community system or a DoD system, you're going to have a level for confidentiality, a level for integrity, and a level for availability. And we always say them in that order. We always say confidentiality first, integrity second, and availability third. So if we say high, low, moderate, that means we have a high confidentiality, a low integrity, and moderate availability. So like the other table, if there's an X in that column for confidentiality, and you have say a moderate level confidentiality, then you implement that control in your control baseline, your starting baseline. And this is what we're going to tailor later. And then maybe your integrity is low, so anytime there's an X in low, you'd implement that control. And maybe your high availability, anytime there's an X in that, you do it. Then it makes it easy on this first one. Regardless of what your baseline is, you're going to implement AC1. And you're going to see that for most of the dash 1, all the dash 1 controls, for example. But when we get down to like AC2 enhancement 4, which is automated audit actions, right? You're going to see some strange things, right? There's nothing in availability, right? So availability is not an availability control at all, right? And then we see these X's, but then we also see these pluses, right? So the X is there because that's from NIST. NIST is saying for integrity, moderate and high, AC2 enhancement 4 should be implemented. And for confidentiality, moderate and high, AC4 should be implemented, right? But it's got a plus in low for confidentiality and a plus in low for integrity. That is the CNSS, the Committee on National Security Systems, going in and saying, hey, we're adding this to low impact systems. So if you have confidentiality low or you have integrity low, then you're going to get this control on your baseline, right? So if we look through this, there's like this, AC2 Enhancement 7, it's been kind of added across the board, at least for confidentiality and integrity. So if you see that, if you see a system and you go, what is your categorization for the system? And somebody says low, moderate, moderate. You know right away that it's either an intelligence community system or an NSS system in the DoD, because you're getting that categorization for each of the security objectives, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The nice thing is that if you have a system, and we'll go down to one of these controls here, and maybe we're looking at this AC4, right? So maybe you have a confidentiality of low, an integrity of low, but an availability of high, right? And we're talking about this AC4, this line right here. This line right here. One of the things that's important to note between the difference between this way of doing a baseline and the high watermark, right? If we have low, low, high, right? When we go to do the high watermark, the categorization for the system becomes high, right? And that means that this control would be implemented even though we have confidentiality low, integrity low, and availability high, which would mean there should be no way in heck this control gets implemented in the CNSS way of doing things. But in the high watermark way of doing things, because we rate the system as high, we implement this control because it's required for high integrity and high confidentiality. Even though we don't have high or moderate integrity or confidentiality for our system, we still have to put this in our control set, and then later we have to go in and tailor it out by saying this control should have never been here to start with. I think this, and this is Jim's point of view, this is my point of view, I think this was a big miss by NIST. I think NIST should have went this way when they introduced Special Publication 853 Bravo. I think they should have adopted the NSS way of doing the control selection for baselining. I really do. Maybe not, they don't have to bring in all these pluses, all these additional controls. They could have just used the standard X's that they had before, which essentially would have made the control baselines the same. But it was a miss, in my opinion. I know NIST, you're doing all kinds of great things. This was a miss. I think this is a much better way to build a baseline for your system because it provides a more finite, more defined requirements on controls. So that's my pitch. The one thing NIST did that was awesome is if we look later, and again, hopefully this is cool. Hopefully you all are good on the differences between those two. The one thing that NIST did is this has been out. I'm going to jump down here. I'm sorry for scrolling so fast, guys. This table. This is your table D2. This has been in CNSS for, I think, since it was created, right? They have this column here, potential, common, or inheritable control. And they went through, and again, this is NIST Special Publication 853 Revision 4 that we're dealing with in this document, because the new one's not out yet. But they've made an X in each of the controls or enhancements they think should be inheritable, which I think is awesome. And NIST did this in the new Revision 5 of 853. They've got a table now where they say, we think these controls are inheritable. It really helps when you're determining, in that prepare step, when you're determining what should be common controls. Now, as like the chief security officer or somebody supporting the chief security officer, I can go in and say, here's my list of controls. And back to CR, your point about, man, that's a lot of controls. We talk about 365 controls at the high level. But look, if we look at this, how many X's? Every place there's an X in this green column, CNSS is saying this should be an inheritable control. We think it's an inheritable control. So all of these X's should be inheritable controls that the system owner inherits. So this is one of the first things we should do when we tailor our baseline is say, out of these 365 controls, how many can I inherit and get off my plate and put that responsibility on someone else, right? You know, a little small window to work with here. That's the thing that's great about this. So hopefully that cues you in on the two different big ways of developing a baseline. The other thing I wanted to talk about, if we go back way over to here, one of the things, if you look at, and sometimes you just gotta check these NIST web pages out because they're not very good at marketing things sometimes. When I was going through this website, I was looking at this. I was like, okay, 53B is out. Let's take a look at it. And I saw this right here, Security Control Overlay Repository. And I'm like, what is that? I've never heard of this before. What is this all about? What is going on with this thing? So I checked it out. I was, okay, let's go look at this thing. It's the FSMA implementation project. And what they've done is they've created a repository. If you are, say you're creating that special baseline, that custom baseline in your organization for maybe Internet of Things devices, right? Amazon Echo devices or Google devices or smart thermostats, whatever. And you're building a baseline for it. You have the ability to say, hey, I did a really good job on this baseline. I'm going to share it with the world. And this is the place, this one, this is the place NIST wants you, and I've got some hiding it back here behind me. NIST has created this place to share them. But I've heard no marketing about this. I even reached out to these guys, hey, can we get one of you guys to come talk about this in the morning show, later in the day? We can record it, whatever. No word back yet, man. I'm sure they're busy. And I look at these things, okay, let's go check out the submissions. And I don't know how long this has been out here. I just noticed it. I think it's fairly new. But if you go here, you look, oh, well, there's nothing there yet, right? Dang. So let's go back. Let's look at the public submissions. Nothing there yet either. Oh, man. So, but a ray of sunshine. NIST developed, and these are older baselines, but it shows you how we can use this, right? There's some documents out there. If I have an ICS, Industrial Control System, NIST has built a baseline for it. If I have an email system, NIST has built a baseline for it. If I'm looking at supply chain, NIST has built a baseline for it. So it's awesome. This is a place that we can submit baselines and share with the community and share with the world. If we build a good baseline, share it with the world. So I was going to go to one of these. Let's go to the email one. There we go. And let's go ahead and download the overlay. There we go. And it's not just an overlay. That's the one thing downside of the ones that are out there right now. They're not just an overlay yet. And I think it would be nice. This, if you want to know about trustworthy email, this gives you all the information. Like, look at all this front matter. What is, what's this all about? This is a huge guide about how to build a trustworthy email system, which is good if you want to, how do we do that? What's it all about? What we want to jump to is all the way in the back here is the actual baseline, right? Or the, there we go. So as you'd expect, they've got a baseline. There's a control baseline for this trustworthy email, right? And they've got some notation in here, right? And they're not, this one thing, NIST, please NIST, standardize your notation, right? It looks like none of these are, there we go. The bold stuff, in this case, the bold things are being added, right? If it's in bold, it's being added. Some places they use pluses and minuses and different numbers and stuff like this. But now we have an overlay for trusted email. If I'm doing trusted email, I can go grab this overlay and it's already set. I know how many controls I need to implement, right? So I think there's a lot of great stuff. There's a lot of great stuff going on in baselining. There really is a lot of stuff going on. There's some new stuff I hope you found this morning. Hope you found some new stuff from this talk this morning. I know these are going long. We pulled back to 30 minutes and now we're kind of going long again. But the point is, if we want to beat things like Emotet and ransomware, we put the 3 and 3, that's an easy way to say things. But really we have to build solid baselines for our systems. And they have to be built across the organization, right? Richard says, new the RMF. Hopefully this, yeah. Alex is here. Alex will tell you. This is the point is to get you guys spun up, to get you ready for working in this field, right? Eric's nice to me. One of the best. I appreciate that, Eric. I really do. It's all about a team, though. We're building a team. So if you can pick up when I'm laying down, pick it up when I'm laying down. There's different ways we can build baselines. Now, the third way we can build a baseline that we didn't talk about, we talked about the CNSS version. We talked about the regular version from NIST. There's another way. You can take the control catalog as an organization. You can take the control catalog, and for every system you build, you can say AC1. Yep, I'm going to do that one. And we select it. And you can go through the list manually, one after the other, and select the controls manually. That's up to you, too. You can do that as a system owner, as an organization. You can say that's a choice you want to make. Other than very rare systems, I would never do that. Build baselines for your organization and have people follow the baselines. Have them follow the baselines. Some new comments. Yeah. All the 411 I have to give out. I'll give you all the information I can, but like CR earlier, that was just information I didn't have. That's why You guys got to share that information. Share the info you know. Right now, what do you guys think? What's your way of doing baselines? Have you done baselines? Have you built baselines? What's the 411 you guys know about baselines? This is how we start. Yeah, we got to start with the baseline. Right now, I'm going to let you guys get a second to answer that while it goes out to the interwebs and back to you guys. We got to start with a baseline. We start with a baseline of controls, and there's a bunch of stuff on there, and some of it we're going to inherit, so that gets some of it off there, and some of it doesn't apply. We're going to get that off of there, and then whatever's left is the controls we have to implement to secure our system. And we put those controls in place, we make sure they're working, they're providing the output they need to provide, and hopefully that protects us from these threats that we have out there. That's the whole point of this deal. Don't build a baseline and then leave it there. You have to have the system owners implement those controls. So what are your thoughts, your feelings? What do you think about this? What do you think about baselines? What do you think about tailoring? This one really should flip-flop with yesterday, because the follow-on to this would be the tailoring. Then we tailor after this. So you'd have to watch the one from yesterday. A couple links in your show notes to videos I've done on other things. And that's organizationally tailored baselines is out there, and control selection is out there. Those two videos you can jump to. I'll think Mako can put the tags up above for that. CR has some experience with CIS and CSC controls. He's using the new terminology. So the Center for Internet Security is a much more verbose control set. And you're saying, and let me throw those two up there. There's two things. So CIS, and you talk. Well, I think you're talking about what most people talk about, the SANS Top 20. SANS Top 20 now it's a French organization, CIS. Everybody refers to this as the SANS Top 20. You can tell CR works in this because he's actually using, he or she, I shouldn't assume. CR is using the actual name. And I was thinking Center for Internet Security, but then I saw the full, what I brought up on the screen here. It's the CIS CSC, which is a lot of the older people refer to as the SANS Top 20. It's the 20 control. I love that, and we need to talk about this too. CR, man, we need to talk about the SANS Top 20 because it's 20 controls. Unlike NIST, NIST puts the controls out there in no particular order. The SANS Top 20 puts them in order. If you can only implement one control, if you can only do one, you do control number one, and that's inventory of hardware. You got to know what hardware you have. Number two, inventory of software. You got to know what software you have. I love SANS Top. I love the SANS Top 20. I'm going to use the old guy term, SANS Top 20. It is CIS CSC. That's the actual term. If you search on SANS Top 20, you're going to get it. It's still going to show up, but that's the actual term. It's yeah, critical security controls. Yeah, there's 20 controls in there, but as you and I know, controls and enhancements are two different things. So there's 20 controls. There's probably like 150 controls and enhancements, or somewhere around there. So in that way, 53 can seem sometimes intimidating, but it's not. Unlike the SANS Top 20, SANS Top 20 says, here's the 20 you implement. If you have time to implement them all, you implement them all. There's no baseline. There's just, you do these 20. If you have time to do 20, do 20. If you have time to do 8, you do the top 8. And when you get to the last one, I think the last one's red teaming. Number 20, I think, is red teaming. If you get to 20, you're good. You've got the SANS Top 20. There's no, do 1 and then 7 and 3 if you're a low system, and it's do 1, then do 2, then do 3. The theory's strong because if you don't know what hardware and software you have, how in the world are you going to secure it? So that's what they say is number 1 and number 2. Hardware, know your hardware, inventory your hardware, know what's out there, and then the same thing with your software. You can't do it. So I can see from the outside how 853 can seem sometimes intimidating, and we talk about 150-ish controls at the low level. I bet the SANS Top 20 or the CIS CSC 20 has about 150 controls and enhancements too. So I think you're probably on par with low impact system rating. Excellent, excellent. SandStop 20 is exceptional. They've done it in a great way, and it deserves time on its own. Yeah. Yeah, critical security control. CIS there's another organization out there called the Center for Internet Security, and they build benchmarks, and benchmarks are equivalent to baselines, but they have. I just looked at the Windows 2019 server benchmark. It's like 2,000 controls and enhancements on the Center for Internet Security benchmark. The nice thing about that is they give you to secure this, here's what you put in. Here's how you set it. You configure it like this. Here's how you test it. You test it like this. They do a really good job. So there's all kinds of good resources out there. Those are outside of NIST, right? SandStop 20, the CIS, Center for Internet Security, benchmarking guides. A lot of those you can get to the guides for free. Some of the good stuff you have to have a membership to access. That's what a good, I think, a good show today. What a good show today, I think. Man, CR, well, you better keep showing up. You got a lot of good stuff in your head. Because it's awesome. It's awesome. So run to the end. I guess that's it. I'm going to end with the same way I always talk to. Take care of your friends, your family, and your coworkers. Take care of each other. This is a community. If you know something, share it with us. Share it like CR did this morning. That was something I've got to look up today. I've got to look that up, and maybe we can get together and see if we can get you on a microphone, get you on a call, get you on something to share your info. You got some info. We got to share. We're going to do that with other folks. We'll talk Alex into doing that one day too. Dee was telling me yesterday she didn't much like the change we're making. I would like to hear your thoughts on the change we're making. It is a little different. We're shifting gears. We're changing formats. Want to make sure that we're fitting the needs of the folks that are watching. You gotta want to be here. So that's what I gotta say. We took about an hour this morning to get through this stuff. So I appreciate you guys hanging out for an hour. Listen to me ramble about benchmarks and baselines and SandStop 20. If you like the channel, share it with your friends. Hit that subscribe down there. Like the video. Comment. Let me hear what you think about the new format. Is there something you'd like to talk about? Let me know what you think about CR. Wow, CR. Awesome stuff today. If you're interested in the RMF, I think, Mike, you're right. We'll do a walkthrough of the RMF. Maybe we can do that on Friday. Walk through the RMF lab at Cyber-Recon. If you're looking to get RMF training, the class is up and running. And the thing about it, it's cyclic right now because we have the first group going through. Eric's part of that group going through. And we're looking at comments coming back from that group saying it would be nice to have this. So we're adding that stuff in. You'll have access to the lab for at least 6 months. Lab and the training. I call lab. Don't think you're going to get a virtual machine and all that stuff. It's a lab as far as going through the RMF process. You have to fill out, and you have to figure out what the categorization of information is, the information system. Figure out what your baseline is. We're going to walk you through each of those tasks, and make sure you know how to do it. So, and then it covers the videos are there, interactive videos are there. The little games like word searches and flip cards and quizzes are all the stuff you expect from a course are there. But we're trying to give you as much information as we can. And also, we put the RMF 2.0 playlist is out on the Cyber-Recon YouTube channel. If you just want to watch the videos, you can't afford the course or whatever, you can jump into that and follow through that. That's what I got to say this morning. Man, it's good to see you guys. I didn't see Mike Bravo or Sierra Bravo this morning. They're going to tell you, go get some. I'm going to say take care of each other. Take care of your friends, your family, your organization. Take care of the community. We got a fight every day. Hopefully you got good things. Hopefully you got some sleep last night. I know there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. So until tomorrow, 7:30 a.m., not sure what we'll talk about tomorrow. Maybe, hey, why don't you guys tell me what we're going to talk about? Throw a comment in the comment section below. What you'd like to do a deep dive into, what you'd like to look at tomorrow. If you don't, I'll pick something random, and we'll jump into it and look through it tomorrow. So thank you, CR. I appreciate the comments, appreciate the feedback. Good show. It's a good show because of folks like you and Eric and Alex and Mike and everyone else that comments. Of course, D helped me keep things going. Thanks to Mako and Emily and Jimmy who keep the things running in the background. And we'll see you tomorrow morning, 7:30 East Coast time, right here on the YouTube. Check out the Facebook page too, D. We need to get that out there. It's Facebook.com/Cyber-Recon Training, all one word. D takes care of that and keeps it moving. Anyways, until tomorrow, 7:30 a.m. East Coast time. Be careful, be good, and we'll see you then.